Welcome to Module 11, Religion and Ethics. This module examines the idea, or really asks the question, is religion really necessary for moral behavior? For most Greek philosophers have contemplated morality independent of God or religion for thousands of years. Really what they are asking is the source of goodness God, or is goodness independent of God? This particular phrase is attributed to Socrates, and we're paraphrasing it here, but basically we're asking the question, does God love goodness because it is good, or is it good because God loves it? For most of recorded history, morality has been linked to religion. There are many philosophers that ask if religion is irrelevant or even contrary to morality. So in other words, is religion necessary to enhance the moral life, or is it totally not necessary? And the real question that we're asking here is, why should I be moral? What is my motivation? Our founding father, John Quincy Adams, was once said that religion is needed to check the antisocial passions of man. And he's going back to Hobbes's State of Nature that says that we are basically self-centered and, only acting in our own self-interest. Have we seen any cases of this? Is man by nature really antisocial? So think back to some of the natural disasters that have happened in the last 5 or 10 years, such as Hurricane Katrina or Hurricane Sandy. When law enforcement was no longer around, how did people act? We saw in at least these two instances where without the presence of law enforcement, people began to loot stores. There were several murders and rapes that happened during these times. A great deal of looting and theft happened, and people just pretty well forgot about the kindness toward their fellow man during these instances. So, Dennis Prager, a journalist, has said that, well, if we weren't born with antisocial passions such as narcissism, envy, lust, meanness, greed, and hunger for power, just to name some of the more obvious ones, why do we have the need for so many laws, either religious or secular laws, to govern our behavior? I think what he's saying is that man by nature is selfish and only interested in their own needs. So where does this morality come from? What's the source? There are actually two thoughts on this. One is called the divine command theory, and it states that all moral principles are the commands of God. And if you look at Socrates' statement, things are good because God loves them, that's what he's saying there, that the principles are the commands of God. So if God doesn't exist, is there a valid morality? The other way of looking at this is the independence thesis. And the independence thesis says that there are reasons to act rightly independent of God's will. So morality comes from human reason. And this is the second half of Socrates' statement that God loves things because they are good. They're independent of God. But which one of these really answers the question, can non-religious people be moral? Where do they get their morality? The independence thesis kind of answers this question. There are several philosophers that have weighed in on this idea of religion being necessary for morality, and one of these is our old friend Immanuel Kant. Kant says that, well, first of all, Kant believed in the independent thesis. He says that morality does exist without God, but he says both man and humanity must follow the same principles. So reason is enough to guide us through these, to find these principles. However, he says that meaningful ethics depends upon religion. It's sort of like religion completes morality and makes it whole. And he says that God is necessary to enforce morality. So he's saying that the idea of God's punishment or the concept of hell serves as our motivation to be moral. Now, while Kant follows the independence thesis, he does believe that God has a role in morality. There are several philosophers that we call ethical secularists who really say that religion is irrelevant to morality, and in fact, sometimes it hurts morality. One of the reasons they say this is because they say that religion has caused incalculable suffering, and we can talk about that more in a moment. One of these ethical secularists is a guy named Bertrand Russell, and he says that we have a duty to fill our lives with meaning and purpose, irrespective of God. And so he was a critic of religion and didn't believe that it should have any role in our life. But that idea is kind of superficial when you think about it, because my meaning and my purpose in life could be a very selfish meaning and purpose, and not moral in any way. So he really doesn't help us answer this question, why should I be moral? A couple of other secularists actually take a different twist on religion and morality. They say that religion causes morality to be inferior when its religious morality is inferior. What they say is that along with religion comes a lot of rules and rituals, and that often we follow those rules and rituals over our natural moral behavior, and that these rules and rituals become more important than our natural moral behavior. And this was one of the ideas of David Hume. He's basically saying that morality is a natural part of our human life, and worship rules ruin this, making it very artificial. They distract from morality. Another person that falls along this same line is James Rachels. And Rachels says that by following religious rules, worshipers give up their autonomy, and that giving up this autonomy is in itself immoral. He says that humans have dignity, and that kneeling to worship others destroys our own dignity. He basically places man equal to God, and being equal means that God is really not a God. So by giving up our autonomy in how we worship, we are in fact being immoral. But neither one of these men are able to answer, why should I be moral? So let's talk first about some of the arguments against religion being necessary for morality, and then we'll go to talk about some reasons why religion does help morality or enhance it. So first of all, many people think that religious morality makes the world a worse place than it would have been without it. What are their arguments? Well, a lot of evil has been done in the name of religion. If you think back to the 1980s and early 1990s, a lot of anti-abortionists bombed abortion clinics and in fact murdered doctors who performed abortion, all in the name of Christianity. Terrorist attacks on 9/11 and even the more recent acts of terrorism have been done in the name of Islam. So, there is some truth to this. Another argument they make is that religion is based on faith, not hard evidence, but we know this to be not necessarily true because there is a lot of historical evidence and even hard evidence that God did exist. Another argument they make is that religious morality closes off discussion. Well, for some people it does. When you try to discuss why a religious person believes what they believe, they will often cite their religious text, or this is the belief of my faith. But when you try to get into a deeper discussion, they cut off the conversation. And so in some cases this does happen. They say that religion also leads to group intolerance, and we can see that in many cases. If you look at some of the more radical parts of Islam right now, they're very intolerant toward Christians, Jewish people, homosexuals. You look at the Westboro Baptist Church, who in the name of Christianity right now preaches very hateful speech about homosexuals, people who've served in the military. And so you can see where this argument comes. However, do these arguments really make the case that the world is worse off because of religion? They don't really weigh what good religion has contributed to the world and balance that against the bad things. Next, let's talk about, why could religion enhance morality? Well, first of all, Our God will win out over evil. That's what we believe if we are people of faith, and that we aren't fighting alone. We have our God standing there with us. Um, that provides comfort to us. Another idea is that if theism is true, that there's this idea of cosmic justice. Um, God will judge people in the end, and everybody will get what they deserve. It's a concept that almost all religions have. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and even Hinduism talks about the idea of karma. Another thing that says that, religion enhances morality is that our moral reason overrides non-moral reason. Um, Another idea is that God loves us. He inspires us to be moral. We want to be moral to please God and avoid any punishments. And this one does help us answer, why should I be moral? Because we're motivated to follow God's love. Another idea is that we are created in God's image, and as a result, we are all of equal worth. If you think of the idea that we are all God's children, then we should treat each other as family. And without God, this idea of equality really doesn't make a lot of sense. And finally, if theism is true, then we have an obligation to future generations. Since God knows who is yet to be born, He knows who's been born, He knows everything about you and your life, and He also knows who is yet to be born, then it's logical that we have a duty to those people in the future, those future generations. Egoists and relativists, they don't have this sense of obligation to the future generations. If you look at the article that you had to read about the study about religious people, it asked the question, are religious people more moral than non-religious people? And I think that's a concept that a lot of people think to be true, but according to this study, religious people were just as moral or as immoral as the non-religious people in the study. An interesting concept that came out of the study was religious people had more pride and joy when they were doing a moral act, and they were more disgusted with themselves when they committed immoral acts. So there's that level of consciousness about morality and our behavior. But what the study really shows is that religion provides a moral framework for us. It tells us what is good and what is bad in the way of our behaviors. It provides for consequences for our immoral behavior. And if you think about it, most religions have religious leaders that, in a way, they act as coaches. They act as teachers to teach us about moral behavior, but they also act as coaches, helping us get through hard times and counseling us. And we have others within our church to help hold us accountable for our behaviors. Kind of in summary, while religious ethics are not significantly different from secular ethics, religion enhances the moral life by providing us a motivation to be moral. I think this quote by Leo Tolstoy really sums up the essence of the relationship between morality and religion. It says to separate morality from religion is like cutting a flower from its roots and transplanting it rootless into the ground. It will eventually wither and die without that to support it.